Hello, good morning. Shruti, can you hear me?
Good morning.
Okay.
കേൾക്കാം.
ബാക്കി എല്ലാവരും ജോയിൻ ചെയ്യാൻ പറയും.
പറയാം.
Hello. Hello. Please tell others to join soon. We hope you are here. Come on fast. I'm sharing my screen. I hope you can see my screen. Okay. Okay. It's 7 minutes past 8:50. So I'll start now presentation. Please tell others to join fast. Last class, we were discussing about the embedded firmware integration techniques, that is integrating firmware into hardware. That is integration as well as testing of embedded hardware and firmware. And I said firmware embedding techniques can be done for both OS-based embedded systems as well as for non-OS based embedded systems. There are certain embedded systems that contain an OS, and there are embedded systems that do not have an OS. So we are looking at those techniques for embedding firmware for non-OS based embedded systems. So in non-OS based embedded systems, we can integrate firmware using 4 different techniques. And the first technique we have already discussed in the last class, that is out of circuit programming. The second technique is in-system programming. Then we have in-application programming, and the fourth one is the use of factory program chips. So this is an important university question. It might come for as a 9-mark question, like what are the different techniques for integrating firmware into hardware. So these are the 4 techniques. Now, and also separately also they were asked for university question, like what is ISP, what is IAP, etc. So the first technique is out of circuit programming, where if we want to program a chip, if you want to embed firmware, usually firmware is embedded into a chip. So if you want to embed firmware into the chip, you are taking it out of the target board. Target board is the board where we have all the components connected, including the microprocessor or the microcontroller, and we are taking that chip out of the circuit board and using an intermediate device called the programmer. We are embedding firmware into this chip. So we connect the chip to another device called the programmer device. Programmer device will be connected to the PC, and through the PC, using utility programs, we can embed the firmware into this chip, the memory chip that is connected to the programming device, and then this chip is removed from the programming device and it is put back to the target board. That is the first method, and we discussed the drawbacks also, because the first drawback is that it results in high development time, because you are always removing the chip from the target, and then after programming it is put back to the target board, and if you want any changes again the process needs to be repeated, and this leads to high development time, and also it is difficult, and the device may get damaged. So it's very difficult to upgrade firmware once it is deployed into the market, and it is usually used for low volume products and proof of concept product development, where we just want to test certain firmware, then we use this method. So that is first method. Then second method is in-system programming. The first method was out-of-circuit programming. Second method is in-system programming. In-system programming means we are not removing it from the target board. Instead, we are placing that memory chip where we want to embed the firmware, into which we want to embed the firmware in the target board itself, and we are going to burn the firmware into that memory chip. So firmware is embedded into the target device without removing it from the target board. Hence, programming is done within the system. That is why we call it as in-system programming. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is it clear to you? Hello? Is it clear to you? Am I audible? Amrita, can you hear me? Hello? Okay. So next we are going to in-system programming. So what is in-system programming? That's what I said right now. That is, instead of removing the memory chip from the target board, we are going to embed firmware into this memory chip without removing it from the target board. So we call it as in-system because it is not removed from the target board, and it is a flexible and easy way because you are not removing the chip frequently from the target board. And in order to perform this operation, we have to turn on the device, the target board, in ISP mode, the in-system programming mode. And in this mode, it allows this particular target board to be connected to a host machine, an external host, through a serial interface. And that can be a PC or another terminal. And we have a utility program running on the PC. And using this utility program, we can transfer this firmware into the target board. So the device can receive commands through the serial port, and on receiving these commands, the data from the host will erase the contents of the chip, and it can be reprogrammed. The code memory can be reprogrammed according to the commands received from the chip, from the device, the PC or the terminal. So now, after burning this firmware into the chip, once this operation is completed, it is reconfigured, or it can be reconfigured by either turning on, resetting, or by turning on the repowering the system. So this method, it uses certain communication protocols like JTAG, that is Joint Test Action Group Protocol, or SPI, that is Serial Peripheral Interface Protocol, or some other proprietary protocols depending on the utility program that we are using. So this is the second method, that is in-system programming. So firmware is embedded into the target board without removing it from the target board. And so we call it as programming within the system, and that's why the name in-system programming. So the first sentence, the first point here is very important. Okay. So, can you hear me? Hello. Ashwati, can you hear me? Okay. So what did I say just now? What did I say just now? Okay, ISP. What is ISP? What does ISP stand for? Okay, in-system programming. In-system programming means we are not removing the memory from the chip. Instead, we are replacing it within the system, and then we are connecting the entire target board to a PC or a terminal, and then we are powering it up in an ISP mode, and then we are transferring this firmware into the memory, the chip to be programmed. Is it clear? Okay. So that was the second method, and it will use certain utility programs, and these utility programs may use certain protocols such as JTAG or SPI, Serial Peripheral Interface Protocols, or something, some other protocols that is already defined by the utility program developers. Then the third method is in-application programming, or IAP, in-application programming. So what is IAP? It is again a third method for integrating firmware, which is running on a target device. And in this method, we are not going to erase the entire firmware. Instead, we can change selected portions of the firmware. that is in the code memory. The memory into which the firmware has been embedded is called the code memory, and in the certain portions of the code memory can be changed. Instead of changing the entire firmware, we can change certain portions of the code memory. While it is in while the embedded system is in use, we can erase certain parts of the code memory. So while the embedded system is in the application mode, that is, once it is delivered to the end user can change certain parts of the code, and certain privileges are given to the end user to change certain parts of the code memory. They cannot change the entire code, but they can set certain values inside the code memory, and that is known as in-application programming. So it is a technique used by the firmware running on a target device for modifying selected portions of the code memory, not the entire code memory, but it gives certain privileges to the end user to change certain portions of the code memory. And it modifies the program code memory under the control of an application. There will be an embedded application available to the end user, and through this embedded application, the end user will be able to change certain portions of the code memory. So like if they want to update some calibration data, certain values, to modify certain values, if the end user want to change certain values, or if they want to change the lookup tables, etc., which are stored in the code memory, then this privilege is provided to the end user through the embedded application, and through this embedded application, users can modify certain parts of the code memory, and while the application is in use. So the boot ROM, there is a memory called the boot ROM, in which we have application program instructions, API instruction interface instructions are stored, and the user is given privilege to access the boot ROM and erase and read certain parts of this memory. And this happens in ISP mode, and they are available to the end user. And in it is possible for the end user application to perform operations on the flash memory through the embedded application. Now we say that this boot ROM, since it contains the code memory and the user code, where it is shadowed with the user code in the address range, and by setting a status bit. If the user want to change the code memory, then the status bit has to be set. That means when there is a bit status called the status bit, it is set in order to access the internal code memory from the boot ROM, and when the bit is cleared, the access will be from the user's code memory. So since the user as well as the embedded application is using the same code memory, there is a bit called the status bit, which is set so that the code memory the access to this system will be from the boot ROM, and if the status bit is cleared, then the access to this memory will be from the user's code memory, so that users can change the code partially. So in application programming in general, it helps users to modify certain portions of the code. And this can be done using the shadowing process, that is, the boot ROM is shadowed with user code, and by setting the status bit, when the status bit is set, it works normally, but when it is reset, then the access will be from the user's code memory. So this is the third method in application programming, where the application can be changed. Earlier we said the end users cannot alter the firmware, but here certain the portions of the firmware or the code memory can be changed by the end user, and for the end users to change the data or the in code memory, the code inside the memory, then they can be given access through an embedded firmware. There is an embedded application that helps access to the embedded firmware, and the users can change certain portions of the code memory. So that is the third method. And the fourth method is use of factory programmed chips. Factory programmed chips means the chips those are manufactured as a like mass production. They support mass production. And embedded firmware, once they are put into the target processor or the controller memory, it cannot be changed. And since this is put into the memory during chip fabrication time, once the chip is ready to be fabricated, the firmware is embedded into the chip during the manufacturing time, and they cannot be altered. And they are available in the market. We can buy the chip and use for our own purpose. So once the firmware is embedded into the chip during chip fabrication, then we call this method as factory programmed chips. So embedding firmware into the target processor or the controller memory at the time of chip fabrication is known as factory programmed chips. So once the firmware design is over, then and once it has achieved operational stability, the firmware files will be sent to the chip fabricator, and they can embed it into the code memory. So after designing the firmware, and once this firmware is found to be correctly working, the firmware is sent to the fabricator, the chip fabricator, and the chip fabricator will embed this firmware into the code memory. And now once this firmware is found to be correct, they can produce any number of chips. So it is convenient for mass production. So this method is suitable for mass production applications, and it reduces product development time, because once you have tested a firmware, then you can apply it for any number of chips, and any number of chips can be fabricated. So it is not recommended if the firmware undergoes frequent changes, since it is done by the manufacturer. Once if you want to change the firmware, then the entire chip needs to be reprogrammed. So once it is delivered in the market, you cannot change the firmware, and so it is not recommended for firmware which undergoes frequent changes. And they are a bit expensive, because testing of the process is done by the developers, and then it has to be sent to the manufacturing unit, and they have to manufacture the chips based on the requirements from the developers. So it is it is a expensive process. But if a large number of chips are required, then this is the most suitable method. That is use of factory programmed chips. So these are the four methods for embedding firmware into an OS-based embedded into non-OS based embedded systems. The four methods for embedding firmware into non-OS based embedded systems. So can anyone say what were the four methods? What are the four methods for integrating firmware into a non-OS based embedded system? What are the techniques? What are the techniques? Anyone? Am I audible to you? Hello? Okay, what are the four techniques? Out of circuit programming, in system programming, then in application programming, and last one, use of factory programmed chips. Use of factory programmed chips. Okay, the chips that are manufactured in factories. We are giving the firmware to the developers, to the manufacturers, and they embed the firmware into this chips. Yes, use of factory program chips. So these are the four techniques for embedding firmware into non-OS based embedded systems. Now next, we are going to the technique for embedding firmware into OS based devices. Into OS based devices, it is based on a program called the bootloader program. Even in our PC, we have a bootstrap loader which loads the OS into memory. And the same process here also, we have a bootloader, and the bootloader will load the program in OS-based firmware, in OS-based embedded systems. So actually, the OS-based embedded system, they are they are programmed using ISP technique only. We had studied four techniques before, and ISP is in system programming. That means we are not removing the chip from the target board, and we are placing that and we are powering up the target board in ISP mode, and then we are transferring the firmware into the memory. So this method, the the OS-based embedded systems, it applies the ISP technique only, which we had discussed earlier. So OS-based embedded system, they contain a special code called the bootloader program. And this bootloader program, it takes the control of OS. As we have in our PC also, we have a bootstrap loader. It takes control of the OS and the application firmware embedding, and it copies the image, OS image, to the RAM for execution. When we want to execute certain programs, they must be loaded into the RAM for execution. So it is the OS that performs all these tasks for a PC. Likewise, here also it copies the OS image to the RAM for execution. And the bootloader for embedded systems, they may be preloaded or it can be loaded into memory using various interfaces. The bootloader program has to be loaded into an embedded system. Only after the bootloader program is loaded into the system can it perform its functions. So it can be loaded into the memory using various interfaces, and it contains all the initialization programs and for supported interfaces, and it will implement the menu options for selecting the sources of OS images to load, and it is the bootloader which then controls the entire embedded system. So this is all about OS-based system. That is, there is a bootloader program which loads the OS into the memory or the RAM for execution, and the bootloader, it will provide all the interfaces required for all the initialization process. Also, is done by the bootloader, and this bootloader program, it is loaded into the memory using the ISP programming technique, and this technique is used in OS-based embedded systems. So, as we said earlier, for non-OS-based systems as well as for OS-based embedded systems, ISP technique can be applied. So, this is about OS-based embedded system where we use a bootloader Hello, can you hear me? Shuri? Okay, there was some problem here. There. I'll continue. So can you hear me? Okay. So we were discussing about the non-OS based embedded systems and where there is a boot program to embed the firmware. And this technique uses ISP, which we had discussed earlier. Now, next section. Now, with that, we have come to the end of the integration techniques, integrating firmware into code memory, integrating firmware into hardware. So, the next section is about embedded system development environment, the environment in which, or the environment that supports the development of embedded systems, or the components of an embedded system development environment. So before going on to the next section, let me take the attendance, please. To your attendance. Number 1. Hello. Number 1. Number 1. Okay. Number 2. Number 5. Number 6. Number 6. Anushri, absent. Number 7. Number 8. Number 9. Number 11. Number 12. Number 13. Number 13. Absent. Number 14. Number 16. Number 17. Number 18. Number 20. Number 20. Absent. Number 22. Number 23. 1 minute, okay? Please don't leave the meeting. I'll continue my class. I'm just taking the attendance. Number 23. Okay, number 24. Number 26. Number 27. Number 28. Number 29. 30. Amrita. 31. 32. 33. Number 33. Harida. And number 3. Okay. So absent is 6, 13, 20 and 33. 6, 13, 20 and 33. Okay, number 33. Haridam. Okay. Tell her to join soon, okay? Okay, so I'll be continuing with the next section, that is embedded system development environment. So What is an embedded system development environment? That is, if I want to develop an embedded system, what are the supporting hardware units or the software units that help me to develop an embedded system? I have to develop the firmware. I have to integrate the firmware into the hardware unit. And what are the things, what are the devices or both hardware and software that help me to develop an embedded product as a whole? So that entire support given to a programmer for developing the firmware and then for integrating this firmware into the hardware is known as the entire environment of the development and embedded system development. So what are the components that make up this development environment? That is, if I'm going to start developing an embedded product, what are the hardware things which I need? And what are the firmware? How can I develop a firmware? Where will I write the firmware code? What are the components that help me to write the code? What are the components that help me to debug the code, run and debug the code, fix the errors, and finally, after fixing the errors, how can I transfer my firmware into the hardware component? So, what are the entire thing that constitute the development of a final embedded product is called the embedded system development environment. Anything, any hardware or the software that supports me to help in developing an embedded product is called the embedded system development environment. So what are the things that come in this environment? That is the focus of this section. That is, what are the components of an embedded system development environment, or what are the things that I need, what are the hardware units that I need, or what are the software utility programs that I need in order to develop an embedded product. So I'm going to build a product. What are the supporting things that I need to develop the product is what is known as the environment of the embedded system development. So now, the development environment, it consists of the following things. This is a university question. What are the components that make up an embedded system development environment? It was a 4-mark question, and it can be asked for essay question also, so that you can expand it. So, anyway, components, it was asked for 4 marks. Components of an embedded system development environment. So the environment consists of anyway, we have said earlier, embedded systems are developed with the support of PCs. We use a PC or a host machine to develop the system, to develop the firmware, and finally, once it is tested and debugged in our system, we transfer it into the hardware. So the most important component that we need in order to develop an embedded system is the development PC or the host machine, and it is the heart of the development process. We call the PC as the heart of the development process because all the utility programs or the development environment, the IDE, the integrated development environment, etc., is they are all software components. All software components, they are loaded into our PC, and in the PC we use the utility programs to test the firmware, and finally once the firmware is tested, we transfer the program into the hardware unit. And for transferring, we said there are 4 techniques earlier, and using any of these techniques we can transfer our program into the hardware unit. So the heart of the development environment of an embedded system is the development computer or the host machine, that where we are going to develop the firmware. And we said firmware is the master, the brain of the system, and without firmware, the embedded product will not function. It is of no use. It is a useless lump of hardware. So we need a PC for developing the firmware. So it is known as the heart of the development environment. The development computer or the PC is called the heart of the development environment of an embedded system. Then we have the IDE tools. And what is IDE? IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. IDE tool, it is used for embedding firmware development, and it is used for embedded firmware development and for debugging. That is, we have an IDE, just like if you have seen, if you have gone through Visual Basic IDE or the C++, VC++ IDE, there are all tools in the environment where we just need to drag and drop, or you can write the code and just test the code inside this IDE. All components are provided by the IDE. We are just dragging and dropping into the environment, and then we are testing our code. So IDE, it is a tool for embedded firmware development and debugging. Next, we have the EDA, that is Electronic Design Automation Tool for embedded hardware design. Then an emulator hardware, then you have signal source, then you have target hardware debugging tools, and then there is the target hardware, the entire target hardware. So I'll discuss this section in the next class. We'll continue in the next class. So hope you understood this. Any doubt? Any doubt? Okay. Thank you. So you may leave the session. Thank you. We'll continue in the next class.